Hey everyone, I'm Victor Dwyer, and this is the Mind Workshop podcast, where we get experts and just sometimes happy people, and we get their perspective on what it takes to really be happy. Today we have Rihanna on, and she's going to go through a little bit intro about who she is and how she got to where she's at, and then we're going to dive into relationships and confidence and success. This one will be a little bit different as an episode. Rihanna, we couldn't get the video on, so it's gonna be a little bit different. But sometimes we just got to go with the flow, and like use our happiness practices. Sometimes technology doesn't work, and we just gotta just roll with it. That's just how life is. Life doesn't work out. We just roll with it. So yeah, Rihanna, please tell the audience about an intro of who you are and a little bit about yourself.
Sure, Victor. Hey, we've learned to do that in business. Do what's good enough, right? So
Yeah.
something's better than nothing. But yes, I am here in person live. So this is not a recording. I am Rihanna Milne. I've been a licensed mental health counselor for 24 years in private practice. In 2009 and 10, I got certified and licensed as a life and relationship coach. And from there, I went on to get a CCTP Advanced, which is Certified Clinical Trauma Professional. In the process, I've written, I think, 13 books now, a couple number one bestsellers, Live Beyond Your Dreams and Love Beyond Your Dreams. One is about emotionally healthy, evolved, and conscious love, and the other one is about the mindset for success. And from there, I've gone on and been featured in Forbes magazine. Wealth Insider nominated me one of the top 10 coaches to follow. I was honored to be selected as one of the top one of 100 successful women around the world in business by the Global Trade Chamber. I was in Disrupt magazine last month and a couple others. And this month in September, it was fun. I came out on the cover of a fashion magazine, just turning 66 years old. That was kind of cool to be on the cover of a fashion magazine. And they did a detailed insert about what's it like to be a woman in mid 60s, still successful, working, and part of the fashion scene. So I'm also a mom of two daughters, Alexi Panos and Stefana, and six grandchildren. So that's a little bit about me.
I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing
Sure.
that. Starting out, like I wanna get a little bit go into a little bit the business type of scenario. So I want to ask you, how can one increase their confidence and self-esteem when starting a new business? And how can you get over the fear of failing? Because so many people these days are so scared about failing, and I
Sure.
think it's a huge concept. So let's talk about that first.
Well, first of all, I've always defined failure as feedback. And you have to understand that failure is just a part of being an entrepreneur and growing. Not everything is supposed to work, right? For example, I was one of the first coaching people to have an app out. I really didn't get much business for it. Kept it for 4 years. I'm like, nah, that doesn't do much for me. Decided to move on. So, you're going to test different things and you try them. At least and that's feedback. That's not what's going to work for me attracting my people because I help those with both childhood and love relationship trauma. That's my niche. So, really finding out what your people relate to. I do have a podcast called Lessons in Life and Love. I said I'm going to do 1 year without fail, see how that goes. And that went great. So you never know. Set up the goals, go for it for a period of time, test it 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, and see how that happens for you. And if it doesn't, just say, great feedback, let's move forward. And
Yeah.
every success that you have helps create your confidence. For example, just last week, for the first time, I was hosting a group of single people away internationally in Cancun. And I was doing some coaching lessons and beach meditation and motivation. I never hosted before. I had no idea what I was doing, but I thought, let me give this a go, see how it works out. Well, I got a 10 out of 10 score from 10 people. So obviously, I did a great job. I put myself in that environment. You prepare the best you can and you move forward and then you tweak
Mm.
from there. So you have to go for it. That's the only way you grow. And I love Tony Robbins' quote, if you're not growing, you're dying. So it's always good to put yourself through new challenges and new tests. And when you succeed, it feels like 100% fantastic.
Yeah, and on the previous episode, we recently talked about the ability to forgive yourself. I think that's one of the
Yeah.
biggest things when it comes to failure. Like when they fail, they just dwell on it, and it's like it's something that constantly bothers them over and over and over. But we eventually have to give ourselves permission to forgive ourselves, saying, "Hey, it's okay. Like the world is
Yeah.
still turning. You didn't die. Like everything is going to be okay." And that ability to forgive yourself is so powerful to move on from what's going on rather than always living in the past. You're able to really focus on the future and focus on the present. And rather, like, it's just a huge skill, really. It's a skill at this
Yes.
point to forgive yourself.
Well, when you're really stuck in the past or stuck in quote failure, unquote, like I said, I call it only feedback.
Mhm.
This is a clear sign that there's still childhood trauma that's looming within you because people that grow up, and 100% of us are, impacted by childhood trauma. Everyone needs to know that, first of all. And the need to people please or prove your worth or your value is also from childhood trauma. There's the top 10 traumas I described, and this is some of the outcomes where, like the Hollywood actors and actresses, they call it imposter syndrome, right? They made it, then they like sabotage themselves because it's like, why me? So it goes back to feeling worthy. So if you're really taking your failure difficult in a difficult way, that's a clear sign your childhood trauma is not healed. And it's really important you learn to live consciously, which we call living in the now. Because if you're always thinking about your future, that's where anxiety lies. And if you're stuck in their past, that's where depression lies. So healing the trauma and bringing you up to the now to really address your goals and your dreams one day, 1 week, 1 month at a time. You just keep moving forward in a very proactive way. And that's part of the positive mindset system that I teach.
Yeah, that's super critical. What are some other childhood traumas, examples that you've seen, that cause us to act the way we do right now in adult life?
Well, if you'd like, I'll tell you what the top 10 traumas are and then
Yeah,
what the
please.
outcomes are so people understand. Because they're everyday things that happen when people are young. And most people think trauma is what they call a big T trauma. For example, getting in a car accident and losing a leg. That would be a big T trauma, of course, or experience a rape or something like that. But the little T traumas are ongoing emotional events that add up over time. So let's go into what the top 10 are. There are more. And before I say them, childhood trauma goes through at least 3 generations. And like I said, in 2021, they defined that 100% of us have some of these traumas. So the first one is if you grew up with drugs and alcohol in your household or any other addiction. So, drugs, alcohol, sex, meaning you knew your parent was a cheater, porn use, gambling, hoarding, spending, eating, gaming, TV watching, workaholism, or being addicted to your machines. So, phones, laptops, whatever machine is in front of the parents. The second one is verbal messaging. So, how did you watch your parents solve a problem? Were they yelling and screaming at each other? Did they yell and scream at you? Was there verbal put downs? Or did you hear, great job, kiddo, I'm proud of you and I love you? And, these positive reinforcing words that actually do build our self esteem. So that's verbal messaging is two. Emotional abuse or neglect is number three. Number four is rape, physical abuse, or molestation. And again, can be happening inside or outside of the home. And then the next one is around abandonment. So I described two types. There's fault, meaning a fault abandonment is if a parent never gets involved with you, or if they are together, then divorce or break up, then they rarely see you after that, or even a parent that's physically in the home but emotionally disconnected. Those are fault abandonments. They just don't get themselves involved with the kids. No fault means a parent that happened to die early, if a parent had to go overseas for war situation, or traveled a lot due to their business, but that's how they supported the family. Okay. The next one, number six, is if you were part of the adoption or foster care system, or you had to go live at another person's house, even grandma or aunt, because your parents couldn't have you in their house. Number 7 is one most identified with. We call that personal trauma. This is if you didn't feel like you fit in. So you might have grown up a chubby child or skinny and gawky and like a nerd. That was kind of me. I wore big glasses and was tall and skinny. I was
Mm-hmm.
teased for that. Being the only African American in an all Caucasian school. So anywhere that you felt different is important. I used to work in the school systems as a trauma counselor, and all the kids identified as ADHD felt very different, had to be pulled out and put in special classes. And I could see that big struggle around that.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next one is sibling trauma. So it could either be your siblings bullied you, or they were born with special needs, so your parents had to give them more time and attention. Or most often, you perceive your sibling as being the golden child, the more special one. So, more handsome, more beautiful, the star athlete, the one smarter with their grades, and you're always compared. Well, why don't you get grades like your brother? That kind of
Mhm.
thing.
Yeah.
Trauma 9 has two traumas. It is community trauma and family trauma. So, community trauma is a prime example of COVID and how it impacted everyone in our communities. Also, Mother Nature's events like flood, fires, hurricanes destroy communities at large. And then that also impacts the family. But other family trauma would be living in a dangerous area, growing up like that, a parent being incarcerated, moving a lot. If you're a military child, they moved every 2 to 4 years here in the US. So then you're a new kid every time you're going to school, or just growing up with hearing lack messages. And this one really impacts the entrepreneur when you're hearing, we don't have enough money for food, or we can't make the bills this month, or we may have to move, because dad lost their job. So messages like that are really important. And
Mm-hmm.
then trauma 10 is mental health issues or mom or dad, with the two most destructive towards children is bipolar, which is manic depressive. Manic can show up as, a spending spree, a gambling spree, drinking binge, something like that. And then it's always usually mixed with depression afterwards. And depression can show up as checking out emotionally, extreme fatigue, or even anger. And then borderline personality, I think that's the most difficult to deal with. That's someone with fast trigger anger, and they get angry at something that most everybody else would not be upset with. And you never know when they're going to explode. But when they're good, they're great. When they're bad, they're horrid. So it keeps kids walking on eggshells. So those are the top 10 traumas that I have found in 24 years of working in all different kind of environments. So
Cool.
now, yeah,
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I love to hear what the outcomes are based off those traumas.
sure.
I had a few of those. Like I grew up, I went through a fat stage, got
Mhm.
overweight, and then eventually, um, I like always found myself, no matter how skinny I would get, I would always think I'm fat and things like that. And it made it where I
Yeah,
was working out nonstop, trying to get that perfect body. Because once I get that perfect body, then someone could love me, then I could love myself, and things like that.
exactly.
So eventually I questioned the whole thing and said like why behind that, and saying like
Mhm.
why does that happen, and that was really eye opening for me, and saying like I can love myself for exactly with who I am right now. So I'd love for you to
Good.
go through some of those outcomes. I think that'd be really
Yeah,
interesting.
for sure. So if somebody suffers with jealousy and control of the partner, that comes from trauma number 7, not feeling good enough, and also the verbal messaging, which is trauma 2. So again, being bullied is in personal trauma. That's a big one. Makes people feel not good enough, not pretty enough, handsome enough. It really lowers your self confidence. Impulsivity is one. You make risky choices that can destroy your relationship. You act out. That can come from even growing up in poverty. All of a sudden, you're making money and you just blow it. You don't have the desire to save because you always want things, so status things, especially like status purses or shoes or clothes. And then you're living paycheck to paycheck, stressed out. You don't have the money you need. So that one's dangerous. Perfectionism is big. Blaming behavior, blaming others all the time and never being able to say you're sorry or accepting responsibility. A big one for my women I see is people pleasing. They can't say no, they overdo for others. Then eventually that makes them angry and resentful. Initially, it's used to raise their self esteem and to get love, but then they're burnt out and they have no time for themselves. I had a marriage couple come to me, and the wife says, I do everything for my husband and my kids, and they do nothing for me. Nobody loves me. And the husband's there, well, I don't ask you to do all those things,
Mhm.
but her childhood pattern, she had a very difficult parent. So people pleasing helped get her some degree of love, if she was
Mhm.
always doing for the difficult mom. And if you had abandonment issues, this can lead to clinginess, anxiety when your partner's gone, reaching out to get attention from someone else. I see this in a lot of my men that, go off and have affairs to seek attention because their wives said no to them that night. And then they're like, oh, you don't want me? I'll find someone that does. Well, that goes deeply into abandonment issues. Shutting down and becoming passive aggressive, yelling or acting out, being aggressive when you don't get your way. That's all based under anger and growing up in that type of environment. Some
Mhm.
addiction can come from that, like overspending, abusing alcohol or drugs, especially if you start early to escape. Imposter syndrome, of course, in our actors and actresses. And even since some of our coaches, you see that, like, I don't know why people would pay me to come to me. I can't raise my prices, because they don't feel worthy enough.
Yeah.
Or other cheap drama. They're seeking out cheap drama because they grew up with it. So if someone is stable and even keeled, they're like, oh, he's so boring. Well, that's because they're used to a lot of cheap drama going on in their lives. So we have to heal all those behavioral norms that come from this type of patterns, their behavioral patterns and norms. And it does impact us in our adult love relationships and also how we perceive ourselves and our success levels in our careers.
Yeah. And I see a lot of those insecurities and I always try to identify them. And like for example, you touched on one when it comes to the validation of women. And I would always chase the validation of other girls. And once I
Hmm.
got that validation, I was like, well, I don't really care about this anymore. And then then I would chase the next girl. Then I would chase like it was a never a perpetual cycle of always chasing girls to try to get their validation. And once I got it, I didn't care anymore. And then I questioned the whole
Yeah.
thing. I was like, okay, why? Like, why am I chasing? Like, if I don't end up caring about it, why am I chasing about it in the first place? And I was like, oh, I'm chasing their validation because I want them to love me so that I can prove that love to myself. But once I got it, I no longer
Yeah.
cared about it. And
Right.
then I realized like, hey, I can love myself for who I am. I don't need someone else to love me in order to love myself. That whole
Yeah.
thing doesn't make sense. And I
So
had
for
that
that
conversation with myself.
validation came from that
Exactly.
bullying when you were more of a chubby child, and we all,
Hmm.
some of us go through that stage and you grow tall and, stronger, especially men.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, men in their teenage years when they feel different or not manly enough for some reason, then they often do seek female validation. They often are the ones that would be cheating, if they're turned down for, sex that night, because they don't have their own self love. They can't see past, well, she's just not feeling well tonight. That's fine. We'll make it another time. Like, this is not about me. It's no big deal. Right.
Yeah.
So we have to really calm all that childhood trauma. And that's what I work with. And then we then teach the mindset for success to help them go on um, with a very strong, confident mindset to create the life they desire and then have the love that they deserve.
I'd love for you to go into exactly how they heal those things. I've done it naturally through identifying it and then like asking why, like multiple levels of why
Uh
until the
huh.
I eventually realized that it always comes down to like not loving myself enough and I'm like asking, okay, why do I not love myself? And then asking why and going so deep inside of myself to getting to
Yeah.
that point. But I love to hear from you how does a normal person go about identifying these insecurities and going through these traumas and healing those things?
Okay, well, let's start with identifying first. Um, Well, I do have the 4 free love tests on my website, rihanamilne.com, where they can go and take the test and then sign up for a discovery session. So, first they look at what they identify, and then through my type of questioning, we usually come up with 3, maybe 4 more than what they saw. Because really, the norms of how people grow up, they don't see it as trauma until I see something going on in their adult life. And I'm like, but wait a minute, this is important because this is why you're struggling now, right? So it is identifying because you can't change what you don't know, acknowledge, or understand. So once they do the 6 assessments in their discovery session, I start putting the pieces together from their past to their current life and what's going on and their relationship patterns throughout time. So, if they're keep attracting someone who's like their father, verbally abusive and addicted to alcohol, well, why do they keep going there? Well, quote unquote, chemistry attracted them to that person. And chemistry is the worst way to fall in love because the brain likes homeostasis. Homeostasis means it likes what it knows, whether it's good or it's bad. So chemistry is always going to pull you back to the patterns of your past. So we have to break those subconscious patterns. Okay. So once we break them, and then my clients understand what is emotionally healthy, evolved, and conscious love, and what are the requirements truly to be happy, then they learn all the dating skills. In between, they learn all the mindset skills, and there's many of them. As a trauma professional, I have notebooks full of skills. So it really depends who's sitting in front of me, what their situation is, what traumas they have, what degree of severity do they have that trauma, and that depends what tools that I do use. So it's like a puzzle, and everybody is treated very individually so that I can give them their best healing. It's really about the best answer I can give because it's
Mhm.
just really, there's some patterns that are very obvious, and then there's some that are not. I do make sure all my people do meditation. I have one that I created called Divine Spiritual Meditation. And it's proven in science and quantum physics that meditation does lessen anxiety, depression, your cortisol, which is your fight, flight, or freeze response, and lowers blood pressure while increasing focus, dopamine, and serotonin levels of the brain. These are your high and happy chemicals. So all my people meditate every day. It's slowing down the reaction time and the anxiety in the brain. So we have to teach them the connection of what they think and how their brain is operating to how their body feels. Because with childhood trauma impacts, I mean, it can cause sleeping disorders, eating disorders, poor immune function, shorter lifespan, heart disease, all kinds of things. So we have to get the stress out of the body so that you feel healthy. With everyone, I also do vitamin therapy. This is all holistic mind, body, spirit. So none of my clients are on psychotropic drugs like anti-anxiety meds. No, we heal it naturally. But vitamin therapy is a very important part of what I do. So again, it depends what someone's suffering with, the type of vitamins that I would suggest for them, you know.
Mhm.
Um, so then we look at, their emotions, what's coming up emotionally, what's coming up in their relationships, what mental health issues are they going through, like depression, anxiety, negative self-image. Most people have negative fear-based thoughts. So we have to clean those up before we get them out dating. And if they're in a coupled or married relationship, I have to heal the trauma of partner A, then partner B, and the trauma within the relationship, which is the third entity. So they have to understand each other's traumas so that they can be a more understanding, empathetic partner.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I want to ask a really interesting question. How do you know if it is a real love? You talked about the chemistry between two people. How do you
Right.
know if it is real love or if it's just loving someone because of an unmet need inside of them? Where it's like, oh, this person is like my dad. sorry, I'll use my mom instead
Yeah.
instead of dad.
Okay.
If this person's like my mom, I want to fall in love with this person, which is more of like an unmet need type of thing
Yeah.
rather than an actual love situation.
Okay. Well, there's much from my research in the Love Beyond Your Dreams book. It's 400 pages. I got to 400 and was like, oh my God, I have to stop. And then I went to my client notebooks, which are 190 pages. So my research really goes into what is the emotionally healthy, evolved, and conscious relationship. So my clients learn what it is they're really striving for. And there's many things to describe it, but one is foundation. Are you starting this in friendship, not just jumping to sexuality? That's one of the worst mistakes you can make.
Interesting.
um, you know um, is it based in fidelity? You both trust each other and yourselves. You have integrity, meaning doing the right things when nobody's looking, so you have confidence in yourself and the other. But I say you have to be the whole package before even going out to date. So, one of the 4 free love tests on my website is the top 10 traits to be a successful single. So, when we do that test, there's a certain score I look for, and where they fall short, that there is where I know I have to focus on them to raise their scores. So, before they go out dating, they feel like they are definitely the whole package. They are ready for love. They are emotionally healthy. There's no cheap drama in their life. Their careers are together. Their finances are together. They're happy. They have a great, happy life as a single. And then meeting a partner would just be a great benefit to that feeling in their life. So they're not dating out of need or desperation.
You said something really interesting. You said start with friendship because
Hmm.
like it seems like as a guy, it's called the friend zone as what we call it.
Right.
And once it seems like once you get in the friend zone, that you never really leave that. From my perspective, so can you go into what you talked about when it said going into friendship and then getting into more sexuality? That
Yeah,
was I never
because
heard of that before.
you should be each other's best friend and buddy. In other words, laugh a lot together, hang out together, have
Hmm.
fun together. That builds a desire to really want to spend more time with each other. You don't have to stay stuck in friend zone when you step up and you say, I really love being with you. You're fun. As my guys from my podcast, the 5 sexy men from the ship, that was from a singles cruise. I asked, what do you want in a woman? And they say, I want the cool chick. She's fun to hang out with. She gets along with all my buddies. She doesn't moan and complain. She's not high maintenance. She's, I want to be with her. I want to hang out with her, and that's what leads to love. So
Hmm.
it's this trust and comfortable factor, safety for both of you. But men definitely have, in caveman brain, what we call the
Yeah.
attraction factor. They procreate the race. So a man will decide in 5 seconds, yes, I want to see her again or not when she walks
Hmm.
in for her date. And the woman will say, yeah, he's good looking. And now let's see what happens. So there's an attraction, but we're looking at the personality. Do they
Yeah.
feel safe with you? Are you smart? Are you accomplished? Are you someone that would make a good dad to my kids?
Hmm.
So women are looking for the safety factor because they are the ones that are the child bearers. So that is stuck in our cave woman brain. We can't help that we want that safety factor. So trying to push a woman too fast to be sexual is like one of the worst things you can do as a man, or talk about sex. Even in my age group, you're out on dates and you hear a guy say, well, you should know I'm highly sexual. And then my clients are like, okay, I'm out, because I don't give a crap, right? It's like, who are you other than wanting sex, which every man does, so you
Yeah.
never lead with that. That's like the worst thing you could do to kill a date for a woman.
Well, what's interesting is going to the validation of other women. I used to always chase women for sex, and that's used to all I ever cared about. And then once I got over this like self love about not really caring about being validated by the girl, then I kind of went through a stage where it's or like a moment where it's like I don't need to chase girls for sex anymore. And then at that point I was like going to your point about just doing it based off like the girls around me. I just do it based off like what I believe in, I'm a big believer in fate. So whatever happens, happens type of thing.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
like, I don't really chase girls for sex anymore, which is really weird for a guy to say that. Um, and
No,
but
it's
like, I
mean
really
that
don't.
that's
Like,
good, Victor. It means you're evolving. Evolving means becoming your best and highest self. So just
yeah.
using a woman to have sex, which as you said, you were validating your own ego. So you were coming
Mhm.
from ego. Am I hot enough? Am I handsome enough? Am I built enough? Let me have sex with you and tell me I am.
Mhm.
Instead of you knowing that for yourself and then having your higher self respect, and then you be the chooser, like, I know I'm the whole package. I have my life together. Now, what women am I
Mhm.
selecting that would be a good partner for me? And this is how my men and women date. We are the choosers. We know we are the whole package going out there. So we're being selective and not sleeping around quickly because why should we stoop to that level unless we know there's something real and important there? So we don't.
Mhm.
And that's
Yeah.
self pride, that's confidence, that's self esteem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And
Hmm.
can you go into a little bit about going back to our conversation of dialing and going through that childhood trauma and kind of unwinding that? So you talked about identifying and you went through a lot of those.
Yeah.
What would be the next stage of taking back that childhood trauma and
Well,
unwinding it?
yeah, it's healing it in the brain and body first, right? So, what are you feeling somatically? What is the brain doing? What is the body doing? So, in the vitamin therapy, and then it's education. You have to learn. And I describe it like a rainbow because I went through my own learning curve. Because when I went through a love trauma, and my partner looks at me, goes, I don't know what's the matter with me. I sabotage everything I love. And my therapist brain was going through the DSM-4 book. And I'm like, I don't know either, but I got to figure it out. And that's what led me to the research in 2011. And then 2012, I came out with a childhood trauma checklist assessment tool that's used around the world today. So it is identifying it, understanding it, then getting all that education. So the education was my research and then writing materials, writing everything up. So it's like going up a rainbow. This is the learning curve. And once you've got it, and know all the mindset for success tools that you can use to quiet the anxious mind, to know that you're not doing false negative assumptions. Let's say your partner's late from work and then you say, I wonder if she stopped to talk to somebody on the phone, or you go into that fear-based anxiety, pretending something's going on or assuming it is and it's not. That all comes from
Mhm.
trauma, or the jealousy or the control. Because when you're totally confident, you don't even think about that because you can't babysit your partner. So you can't be out there dating if you're, jealous and not feeling good about who you are. You got to clean that up. So really the notebook is the process for my people. Like I said, it's 190 pages. So we go step by step and we work as a team. So how they fill out that worksheet, then get it to me, I know exactly what I have to work on them with them the next day. So it's a team effort. They write to me and then I teach them back what they need to know. So, coaching is very much a team effort where therapy is just processing your feelings. And that's why people don't heal from childhood trauma and therapy. They really need a solid education about what to do and what to learn. And then once they're out, their trauma is healed, which is part A of my program. Then I teach what is the emotionally healthy relationship? What are you looking for? Are you codependent? Do you have love addiction? Identifying that and then how to get over that,
Mhm.
and what is the healthy partner that you desire. And here's an example. If I have a younger woman and she's there, yes, I definitely want marriage and a family. Then I said, then when you go out the first date, you need to say, are you a man that sees yourself one day as being a father? And if he says, well, maybe, if the girl really wants a baby, I would think about it. That's a no. If he
Mhm.
says, like my son in law, oh, absolutely, I could imagine being happy if I wasn't a father, that's a yes. And they're a father of two. My son in law that said that to my daughter. So you got to know the questions to ask. You got to know how the answers are deciphered. Because some women have
Yeah.
said, well, yeah, he said he probably would. I said, well, that's a no. Now, 5 years you're into the relationship, he still doesn't want kids.
Yeah.
So there's certain questions you need to be educated and know how to ask. So you'll know by date 1, 2, and 3, is this a keeper? Is this a one and done date?
Yeah.
You
And
know?
on a previous podcast, I talked with another person that was also a relationship coach, and we were talking about the girls that I pursue, and she goes, "No, Victor, you're thinking about it all wrong. You're not pursuing a girl like a shark. It's you're attracting these you're attracting them naturally through what you do." And we basically went through like, Victor, what's really important to you? I said, oh, the energy of the girl, meaning like, does
Mhm.
she have the level, like at least 50% of the level of energy that I do? That's really
Right.
important to me. And um, she says that's what you need to bring up on, and that's what you need to attract is based off the energy that you bring out. And the first thing that you mention when you see there, you don't say, oh, you're so attractive. No, you tell her, oh, wow, I love your energy. And you see if she resonates with that, if that's most important to you. So, like,
Yeah.
rather than complimenting the girl on her looks, you're going to only be attracting the girl that, the girls that chase you back are going to be the ones that need for saying that they're beautiful and things like that. But rather, you say the things that are important to you, like, oh, I love your level of energy, I love your vibe, I love all these things
Right.
about you, and then bringing that the girls that you want to naturally attract, rather than doing the normal guys that only look at their attraction level type of thing.
Right.
So I thought that was really
Exactly.
fascinating.
Yeah. Who are they as a person? Do you
Hmm.
see having a great time with them throughout life? Do you see them as a great mom to your kids or a partner to you in business when you have to go out to business functions? It really depends. What are you looking for? And that's that requirement list that I have with all my clients, know exactly what they're looking for in their life to be happy, then going out to attract a partner that fits into their already successful single life.
Yeah, can you touch on that for a second? I've got two huge contradictory opinions from multiple people about
Okay.
partners and business. And
Hmm.
I've had other people say absolutely not. I will not hire family members. Like there's no chance anywhere of that happening.
Hmm.
And I have other people that do very successful and they hire, like, it's an all family business, and they scale it and it's all successful and things like that. So, what is your opinion on family and business and relationships?
Um, Well, I have 2 daughters, and one of my
Mhm.
daughters is one of the top coaches in the world, Alexi Panos, and her partner, Preston Smiles. And we talk great ideas together. Oh, I've tried this, I try this, I do this, I do that. So we enjoy talking business together. But of course, we're two separate businesses, two different
Mhm.
approaches, but we respect each other's way of being. My other daughter has definitely her own thing. She's an advocate now for against the book banning and freedom of speech and so forth, freedom of American rights. So, it really depends what you're into and depends on the personality of the family members. Yes, sometimes it works out great, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes couples can work very well together. Sometimes it just becomes all their life is about. But I look at Lexi and Preston's marriage, and they've got 4 little ones, 5 and under. So they are raising kids and having successful businesses, and they each have their own separate coaching and then coaching together. So, it's really the personalities of the people, but they're both very spiritually evolved, consciously aware people. So, it really depends on I think the personalities and, if they can handle it together or not.
Yeah. And when your relationships, do you usually see the people that are more similar to each other, or is it more that the opposites attract type of thing? Like when you see the most successful relationships and the ones that are
Mhm.
most consciously aware, do you usually see people that are very similar in it, or are they usually very
Yes.
opposite? I'm interested in
Yes,
that.
especially in the deeper things that are most important. How are they in their confidence level? What are their choice of careers even? If one is a 9
Mhm.
to fiver and the other one's an entrepreneur, sometimes that's not a great mix because they don't understand each other's business. Um, do you have the same moral values? Do you have the same future goals? Do you have the same fun factor? You do have to enjoy the same things. However, you can have separate hobbies as well, and that other person support that. For
Mhm.
example, I could have a guy that likes sports fishing and I don't really want to do fishing, but he can do that,
Mhm.
and I might enjoy something else and I do that. So I think you definitely, though, the important qualities of someone. In my research, it said the number one most successful thing for a couple is to both have spirituality and to practice that
Interesting.
together. That's the one thing that keeps a relationship sustainable over time.
So curious. So I'm a naturally spiritual person, but I'm not like devoted to any particular religion.
Hmm.
So do you think if I were to try to pursue a girl that was, let's say, super Christian or something else like that, do you think that relationship would not work because of our different spirituality differences?
Well, this is how I describe it. Spirituality is a way of being. You are spiritual 24/7. It's not like going to a church at 4 o'clock on a Saturday and then you say, I'm spiritual. Okay.
Okay.
It is a way of being in your insides and how you think and how you are acting constantly 24/7. Religion
Mhm.
is more of a man made protocol where there's one faith and you go to the temple or the church and spend your hour and do that. And hopefully you're following the principles of that particular faith. Um, I've had seen spiritual people mesh very well with those that would call themselves Christian or Jewish or Buddhist. It really depends if you're having these open conversations. In every higher book, a lot of the concepts are very much the same. The golden rule, act to others as you would want them to do unto you, right? So a lot of the moral messages are the same in the higher books.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
So, but if you're spiritual and practicing together, that might mean you do a religious service as well, or maybe you sit and you watch a TV show of a minister that you both like. It could be
Mhm.
anything as long as you're practicing the principles together as
Yeah.
spiritual.
So I have a business question for you. So,
Okay.
you know how we went through the childhood traumas and things like that. I used to have a lot of insecurities of things that would make me work on my business 14 hours a day. I would work all the time because I would always criticize myself for not working on my business. And now that
Right.
I've unraveled those insecurities and I have a lot more peace of mind now. I've noticed that I work a lot less on my business because of that. Because I'm like, instead of working 14 hours a day, I'm okay with working 4 hours a day. And
Hmm.
like, and I noticed myself working on it. I know I should work on my. I know I shouldn't use the word should because it's a
Right.
society thing. Anyway, but I know I want to work on my business more to have better to grow it more. But I find myself less motivated to do it because I am getting such peace of mind of where I'm happy with my current state that I find myself not wanting to work on my business even though I want to grow it. So I'm curious if you've seen that situation before or like what your initial thoughts are on that.
I think it's important to balance life and fun and career. You know, Growing a business, I remember working many 14, 16-hour days before a major launch of a product or my online school, or even to prepare for this singles group in Cancun for a week. I had 14-hour days. But then, I was one that always played hard. Weekends, I'm out dancing, going to concerts, listening to bands, seeing my friends, going to the beach. So I think as long as you keep a balance that works with you. I mean, I'm off Friday through Sunday and work Monday through Thursday. So that balance works for me. Now, we
Right.
have a goal setting system in my program. So you wake up with 3 goals a day. And if you have time, you do the other two. So that's 5 a day. Are you staying with that? Then there's goals for the week, goals for the month, goals for 6 months, goals for a year. Of course, those are more lofty. So this is how I always grew in my business. For example, writing the love book, I was going to move to Florida and I had my date of April picked out. And spiritual messages came through in my meditation. Write the book on love. It'll be a number one bestseller. And I'm like, oh God, I don't want to write another book. I just wrote Live Beyond Your Dreams. It's a lot of work. But then it was the summer or the winter season, and I'm like, you know what? It would be a great book because I went down and to the beach and I said, if I were to write a book on love, what would I cover? And I said, I want it to be everything else that's not in every other book. So I said, yeah, it would be a great book. So I decided to write it, and it was a 6-month goal. I have to be done before I move to Florida. So I asked for my sample book to be sent to me both in New Jersey and then in Florida. Didn't come to me in New Jersey. I'm like, oh, darn. And I show up in Florida, and there it is leaning against the door in my townhome as I'm pulling up with the moving truck. And I just picked it up, and it's like, I did it. 6 months, I reached my goal. And that was a big one, 400-page book done with 18 rounds of editing. So, I really stayed on that project because I set the mindset goal that I will finish before I move. So, I think the goal setting part is really important for life balance. So you keep moving forward and keep achieving the goals that you set out to do in your business. It would be easy to get lazy if you're an entrepreneur. I don't feel like working today, so I won't. So you really have to be driven by your own purpose and your mission to really reach the goals that you're looking to reach. I always loved writing. I wanted to be a best-selling author. I wanted to have a TV show, which I have. I wanted podcasts. I've had 6 radio shows, so these are things I wanted to achieve through my business lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted clients around the world. So I wasn't limited to just one state. So being a coach, I could teach around the world. Being a counselor, it was only limited to one state I live in. So I thought, yeah, I'm going to be a counselor and go global, or coach and be global. And that's what I decided to do. Yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. Well,
So,
I don't want to take up too much of your time. We're right on the hour right now.
okay.
Rihanna, please tell the audience how to find you, how to find more about your business, and all that information.
Sure. Okay. So my website's the best place to start, rihanamilne.com. And again, on there, you can do the discovery session. You can get the free ebook, How to Have the Love You Deserve. You can take the 4 free love tests and get the first 60 pages free of my books, Live and Love Beyond Your Dreams. And my podcast, Lessons in Life and Love with Coach Rihanna Milne. I have 350 audios and videos on my YouTube channel, and I am on every podcast channel under Lessons in Life and Love. That's the best place to find me.
Awesome. Well, Rihanna, thank you so much for joining today. Thank you, everyone, for listening. This is the Mind Workshop podcast, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having me.